This is Political Core, the non-PC edition of The Aaron Cruz Show, where you decide the topics. The only place where you get the news you want from the people you trust. We are your balanced and accurate information resource.
Hello and welcome to the Aaron Cruz Show, coming to you from Palm Springs, California. This is Political Core. I'm your hostess, Aaron Cruz. Thank you for joining me. So tonight's topic is Constipated Congress. I know that sounds funny, but I mean, what's holding everything up here? Multiple battles within and Lowdown on London. Many of you know I just got back from a trip to London. It was for pleasure and fun and enjoyment, celebration. It was not for work, but I made many observations while I was there. So I think that should be interesting. I've kind of given some close friends some tidbits, but in any case, some of the areas we will be discussing are the stop up in Congress, the non-action on Obamacare, AHCA, and of course, many of you have already heard that in the Senate, there is a new bill that's been, or an amendment, or whatever you want to call it, new legislation that's been put up. And the CBO is going to take a look at that. So we're going to discuss that. And basically, Congress's ability to take action on everything but healthcare reform, and tax reform and reform. Even and especially the money that is padding the pockets of government. So as we speak, these people are getting paid and they're doing pretty much near nothing. So we also talk double standards. We talk Trump tweets. And, you know, I mentioned this is almost the intro exactly from one of my prior shows. And the thing is nothing's changed. And that's kind of the point. I mean, the day-to-day rhetoric has changed, but it's not really. It's just all of the same, but just new words meshed together. So the good, bad, you decide on Trump's tweets. And then basically, we're going to do a revisit to Islam. I went to London, as I just mentioned, and I think it's important that we revisit Islam in the West. And I have so much from my return from London to share on a topic, which I think personally, many of you know, have many groups here in the U.S. concerned, and that topic is Islam, and it's, I think, even more prevalent over in Europe right now, but we are seeing an influx. So without delay, let's go ahead and get to the core, on the political core, all right? So now when we revisit Islam, I want to take you through some numbers because I think it's really vital you understand. Now, I know this is a couple years ago, 2015, some of these numbers, but I want you to understand when we look at Islam and we look at the kind of things that we're seeing on the television, the populace in the United States is rather small. The Pew Research Center puts Islam population at about 3.3 million Muslims of all ages living in the United States. That's 2015. That's 1% of the population. Now, I think I mentioned before in a previous show, and I know I'm talking really fast, but we have a lot to cover, and we're actually going to have to do two pieces, one today and one next Thursday. But I'm talking fast. You can replay it and listen again if you're really interested, but just follow me here. So 1% of the U.S. population is Muslim, all right? And when I did my calculations, it was at least double that. And that's looking at mosques throughout the United States, the census, and other information. And it should be interesting to see the next census that comes out, what that number will be. In contrast, for Jews, we see 5.7 million, okay, in the United States. And for Sikh, we see the Sikh Coalition and advocacy group says there are more than 500 Sikh Americans. And Boston University says there are about 280,000. And as for the Hindu, we see about 2.1 million. Okay? And I think this is important to mention because we're talking, we have 300 and some odd million people in the United States, and we hear a few squeaky wheels, and they're getting, seems to be more and more, sorry about that, more and more bold every day, and they're changing some of the things within the foundation of our republic, and such a small piece of the pie. It's a concern. So why do I mention this? And it can't be said enough, stressed enough, as the Great Migration basically has hit the Middle East and Europe. It's spreading, okay? When I went over to London, or to England, should I say, or the UK, as many will call it, it's spreading, okay? And Islam and Muslim population is spreading, and in my opinion, and this is just my own humble opinion, and please hear me all out, don't jump to the one side before hearing me out here. We must protect and defend our homeland, all right, the United States of America. It's our duty as citizens to press our communities, our leaders locally up to the national level to enforce law. Okay, and now when I'm saying this, I mean, we're looking at the influx of quote-unquote refugees. All right, refugees. So, are they refugees or not? I mean, they're fleeing their nations. Why don't they fight for their nation? So, to ensure that we, rather than be protectionists, are advocating for the right and perfect process to ensure we help those who we can help, those who truly will be pressing for assimilation and the American dream and pursuit of happiness, all the while using process. We need to equip others coming here temporarily, okay? Temporarily. I think part of the process is, the people who come here on student visas and other things, we need to equip these people and send them back to rebuild their own nations, okay? And I know many of them are not from maybe some of those nations who are so hard struck, but it only takes one person to affect thousands, and then those thousands more, and it just butterfly effect out, okay? So let's think big picture. All right, so rather than encourage the programs that have failed in the past, okay, it's 2017, it's not 1940s. We must press, I believe, for further immigration enforcement as well as comprehensive reform, and that includes the refugee process and asylum process, because in that process we have a lot of bad policy. It is 2017 now. These people, they've had many years. We've sent them billions of dollars in many of these countries, their governments, billions of dollars. I know they're war-stricken, but things have got to change. We cannot be the rescuer of the world or the bully of the world, okay? We need comprehensive reform. We can't have refugees coming here, then bringing their families, and their family bringing more family, and family upon family, and then having children and everything else. I mean, it's 2017. We have to get an equilibrium here. We've let a lot of people in since the 1970s, actually, and we need to find a balance. But in any case, we have to do something along those lines, and I mean, I'll get back to that a little bit later, but I mention this because I just came back from London, England, and coming through U.S. Customs back into the United States, it was absolutely disturbing. And you may be thinking right now, who is this woman? Who does she think she is? She's a racist, she's a religionist, she's a ist. Really, I'm not. I really am not. I love all people from all walks of life. I have friends from all walks of life. There are people from every walk of life that are, pretty much, that are just good people. But it doesn't take very many bad people to ruin a bunch of good people's day and lives forever. So, on my way back, let me repeat that. coming through the U.S. to customs back into the United States was absolutely disturbing. Absolutely disturbing. And I won't apologize for what I'm going to say, but I did not feel in the citizen line, okay, for the United States of America, I was a minority. In the U.S. citizens line for customs and immigration enforcement, as I'm waiting in line, I, Erin Cruz, who am white with, Scotland and Prussia, Jewish family and history and background on one side of the family as well. So I was a minority. So think about that. And I'm not saying that in a bad way, and I'm not saying it in a racist way, and I'm not saying that we don't have a lot of people who've come here from many different walks of life and country and come here the right way, come here the legal way, done things well, done right by their assimilating and creating families and lives here and building the economy and being good, solid citizens and contributors to the United States of America, and people who are good, upstanding, tax-paying citizens. But I'm just going to cut it dry here. I was a minority. But among all of those people who are American citizens, who are good, upstanding citizens, who are from all walks of life, one thing was clear, is that just because I was a minority does not mean that we all weren't equal as citizens of the United States of America. Okay, so think about that for a minute. But in any case, we can come back to that later. I want to get back to Islam. Boy, it's going to be a heated show tonight. So back to Islam. When we look at the United States, okay, it's crystal clear to me, especially after visiting the UK this last week, specifically London, townships around London. The contrast is clear. Okay, there may be many ways to look at the changes, as locals call it. They call it changes. That's the word I kept hearing over and over and over again from people in London and in the surrounding townships, okay? But look, in the United States, given the numbers I've given you earlier, okay, we still, at 1%, have seen these kind of changes. And it's striking. And it's clear to me we both, as nations, have a problem. Okay? And I see it's a long-standing issue, and it's impacting communities. But I want to get to something very interesting today that I had read. All right? And given those numbers of 1%, there is no reason, what I read today about some of the activism I'm seeing from Islam people, Muslim people, I don't know what you'd want to call this woman, but she's a piece of work. That's all I'll call her. And she's the exception. She's not the rule. Okay. But in the case of 1% population, there's no reason to have an activist calling for jihad of the Trump administration. And you heard me. She called for jihad. This was this was a little bit back, but she did. And the loud 1%-ish of Islam population here being given a microphone of tolerance while it's screaming death to our highest leaders in our sovereign and sacred soil. I mean, that in itself is a hate crime. Okay? It's a hate crime, categorically, 100% against every American citizen, man, woman, and child. It is a blatant and inexcusable utterance of hate, and when given by a citizen, should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Freedom of speech does not cover threatening our United States president. And what am I talking about here, okay? For those of you just joining us, we're going to be talking about the AHCA and the new bill that came out. We're going to touch on my recent trip to London, which I'm talking about a little bit right now, blended into a conversation about Islam and the core of our national need to secure borders, enforce immigration, and the threat of religions piercing our great nation into more of a divide. So that's kind of what we're talking about. But I want to get back to this activist chick, little chica, little mamacita up there in her loud microphone in 1% population here in the United States and threatening our United States President Donald Trump. That never would have happened under Obama with a Muslim. And we all know why, because he promised to side with them should push come to shove, should the winds change. So what I'm talking about is this lady who called for jihad against our current administration. I'm talking about Linda Sourpuss. That's what I'm going to call her, Sourpuss. I can't pronounce her last name. And I'll just be frank with you. And everybody who knows me, I just call it how it is. And I'm very honest. And I don't, if I don't know how to say something, I'll just say I don't know how to say it. And if I don't know something about something, I'll just tell you I don't know about it. Or I'll ask somebody who does, and I'll point you in the right direction. But in any case, I'm going to call her Sourpuss today, because that's what I really think she is. She's also a very vile woman who needs to be pursued by law enforcement. In any case, she's the Islam activist. She's spewing hate across our beloved nation. And this is the deal. Not only did little Miss Sourpuss, that's this hateful woman, not only did she call for jihad against Trump, she doubled it down. She said, I am taking names, quote unquote. I am taking names. Linda Sourpuss, she warned critics days after calling for Trump jihad. I am taking names. She spoke at the Islamic Society of North America, ISNA, last week, and she's anti-Israel and pro-Sharia activist. She just blows my mind. They even give her a microphone. She received criticism when she called for jihad against Trump, and despite the backlash, she basically has threatened the critics who have, quote-unquote, lied about her. She tweeted, now, this is a direct quote, just know that I am taking names of those who have lied about me to defame my character. I may be quiet now, but not for long. I am working. End quote. She added, quote, I have a running document of the lies and who is putting them out there. This is not about setting records straight. It's who will pay for the lies. What does that mean? Because for me, as a person, if somebody said that to me, I would take that as a direct threat after calling for jihad against our president. I mean, flat out jihad against our president. And then she says, this is not about setting records straight. So that doesn't mean she wants to debate somebody on the TV or clear it up or have somebody apologize via the court. It's who will pay for the lies. So that means she wants to send people out there. She wants to target American citizens? Question mark? Ooh. That very well could be. I'm not sure. But this woman is vile, and she is as anti-American as an anti-everything we stand for, freedom-loving nation as they come. So I need you to actually think about this for yourself for a moment, okay? Living here in the United States, being that for all of the other religions combined here in America, okay? We do not see entitlement and pushing forth of religious requirements by other stated religions, not like with Islam, okay? Sure, the other practicing persons have their requests, and even Christians, prayers before they eat, yada yada. But they're not pushing and prodding to change the entire infrastructure and makeup impacting our culture and society as Americans to fit their own beliefs for the most part. All right, most of these particular religions, specifically Islam, with others, and if you want to call them minority groups, it really depends on how you look at it. I mean, they're in specific areas and pockets due to, the proximity of their immigrant family or the friends of their churches or wherever, synagogues or wherever it is that they might go on a daily basis, okay? But most of them are assimilating, and I include Islam with, Muslims with that, because many of them are, okay? And they just want to create better lives for themselves, for their families, for their communities. Now, this is not what Linda Sourpuss is calling for at all. She's calling for war, people. This woman is calling for war. She's calling for an attack on our United States president. She's calling for, not to set the record straight, but she's going to be, who she's going to make pay. That's a direct threat. I mean, calling blatantly for the rise of Islamists within the United States of America to unseat a sitting president and his administration. She is threatening every citizen who stands against her in Islam, people. I mean, I don't know how much more blatant you can get than that for a person who speaks for many, many Muslims across this nation. And that's only a 1% population, but for the love of people, wake up. Now, interestingly enough, this activist is spewing more hate and threat in her crimes against American citizens, because that's what I look at them as, than most could ever dream while carrying out another type of hate crime. Okay, this woman is given a pulpit, a microphone, she's tweeting, she's putting it out there publicly, and she's getting away with it. Intimidation and fear. For me, this is what I see. Now, there was a bill introduced the other day, and I'm not sure if you heard about this. I believe it's H.R. 257. I could be wrong, and it's basically about hate crimes, and it addresses hate crimes in America. Only the problem is that you only have protections if you are a minority, really. Okay, I looked at it. I had to look this up. I thought it was fake news, no joke. And I went on to opencongress.com, because you can go, or opencongress.org. Anybody could go on there and look up these different bills and read who supported it, yada, yada, yada. I went on there and I read the dang thing and I was shocked. Because you will basically have only protections if you're the minority, not based on the crime being instituted as, kind of an angle rooted in the fact that someone has chosen to harm you based on something they hate about you. I mean, it's insanity. So basically, yes, this is another topic that basically we can only grace, but the root of it all, okay, at the core of it all, at all of this, is if you are truly free, you're responsible for yourself, for your actions or inactions. If you hate and then harm, the consequences for your actions should be stable, constant, regardless of minority or majority of the other party. Okay, and I reference back to standing in line at customs and immigration enforcement. And minority, majority, we all are equal. A crime against another is a crime. If you commit a crime based on hate, perhaps it was premeditated then. Yeah? Still yet, I think that minority or majority, what's the difference? Because it's still a crime against another. Hate crime verbiage irks my freedom space, okay? It really, really does. And when I think about most crimes against others are based on hate and disdain and conflict and so forth. So back to Sourpuss, because, the Islamic activist. Currently, she is spewing not just hateful words, okay? Freedom of speech is freedom of speech, which many do, and which many can do. She is threatening the president and now our citizenry. I mean, something isn't right. This woman is lauded as brave. I mean, how can she hold the title of, and this is an interesting thought, a Palestinian American? I think that's what it was. Palestinian American. Now, I'm going to touch on this one real quick. I mean, we just got to call it for what it is, people. If you are a citizen of America, of the United States of America, you are an American, or you're not. There is no hyphen. There is not. Unless you hold dual citizenship, in literal sense. There is zero hyphen. We are a united people. Period. End of story. Okay? To this end, I say that be it your religion, Hindu, Buddhist, Mormon, Christian, Sikh, Catholic, Jew, Muslim, or whatever, when you come to America, you are also an American. Not that you put your religion aside, rather, I believe that you adopt the nation, bringing with you your beliefs for your home and your family. Do not expect other Americans to agree with you or your beliefs. It's not going to happen. Your chosen worship, your choices, and especially, all of those things are your own. And especially, do not step on another American's freedom. Okay? If you want a space of rigid adherence to a lifestyle of religious barbarianism, or shall I say oppression, this is from those who want to live in their own space of freedom, okay? Go live in a place that embraces such a lifestyle. Do not come to America to change her. Well, many, personally, I've heard this one a lot of times. She's a melting pot. America is a melting pot. She is not a melting pot. There is no room for religious or ideological persecution of others in a free nation. There just isn't. Period. End of story. I'm going to say that again. While many may call America a melting pot, she isn't. There is no room for religious, ideological persecution of others in a free nation. There's not. Think of it this way. When we have liberals saying that you're not being tolerant of the needs of Islam or XYZ, think about it. Is there an intolerance of XYZ, or is XYZ calling for the conforming of others to their standard based on their own intolerance? Because freedom doesn't work that way. End of story. Period. And I know I'm getting a little bit impassioned here and outspoken, and I'm talking quick. And I'm probably being really, really loud because this is what happens when I get fired up. Most of the time I'm pretty subdued and quiet and reserved, observing. But I get in a place of passion, and one of the things is freedom. And you just don't step on somebody else's freedom. So I say this because in many places worldwide, we see the commune or the living among one another in somewhat peaceful harmony, many different religions, nationalities, and all that. But in pushing the case for social justice or community conforming to religious point or conflict points, conflict ensues. Okay? It's not right and proper. In the United States, we see this more and more, and unfortunately, this is an issue which I've seen in many cases. In Europe, this is becoming commonplace. We've seen it all over the news, and then I went and visited. I have stories to tell on that. I couldn't believe it was actually true. I almost had hoped that what I had seen on the TV, what I had experienced watching news networks and the like, it just couldn't be. But unfortunately, the reality is that especially when barbaric and fundamentalist Muslims move in to more Western nations and basically use their homeland beliefs and laws to inflict harm and commit war against the populace in their invaded nation. Now, I say invaded because there are many people that immigrate with different religious backgrounds legally, and that's fine. But when we see mass migration like we've seen across Europe, excuse me, I'm telling you, you can't help but wonder if it's an invasion, because it's on massive scale. So now, I don't want you to get carried away. Again, I'm not saying every Muslim is bad or barbaric person, okay? What I'm saying is that there is an uptick and a push of certain persons in Islam that are working towards an agenda, just like little Miss Linda Sourpuss, okay? There are those like the mass migration folks who are invading nations, and many are putting tax burden on taxpayers, okay, of those nations, and in many cases causing harm, financial or otherwise. Don't just look at harm as being a punch in the face or or a stab in the back. It's financial. The burden is massive, massive scale. And there must be a solution found. Now we're going to get to the core. If nations are to survive, there must be a solution found. Borders must be defended and economies protected. Stability must be encouraged on all levels. How do we accomplish this? By talking to one another is one thing. I talk to people consistently and constantly. Sometimes I'm quiet, super, super quiet, but many other times I talk a lot. Or I listen. Listening is a good one. By talking with our leaders, listening to our leaders. By saying what we do and don't want as a community, what is and is not working in our communities. We have to communicate. We have to. This is non-negotiable here. Many do not realize the impact, the slow and steady, as well as the last flush of about 5 years internationally of the mass immigration throughout the Middle East, Europe, and into the United States. In many ways, I see it as a strategic flow of persons into the United States via the UK. And I'm going to say that again. In many ways, I see it as a strategic flow of persons into the United States via the UK. Absolutely, 100%, without a doubt. Is that everyone who's doing that? No. Okay, no. I'm not saying it's everyone. What I'm saying is that I see in many ways it's a strategic flow of persons into the United States via the UK, and it's also into the UK. They're bleeding the system. They're breeding out certain populations, and you're just rolling your eyebrows right there and your eyes right there. But the thing is this: what do we see? What are you seeing? Look around you, because it's there. And I'm not saying that we can't get along and live peaceably in certain areas with certain people. But all it takes is a few bad seeds. And we have to be very, very careful who we let in. And stability has never been so needed as it is right now. Okay? I'm really serious about this. And in the case of my trip to London, okay, there may have to be a part 2 of this series, like I mentioned, because I really do not want to portray my visit entirely negative, okay, or in a negative light, because there's so much that was just so beautiful about it. Okay, I went to London as a vacation trip to visit friends and attend a 70th birthday party of a dear friend. It was a spectacular trip, and one that basically, I don't want it to be overshadowed by my political and social observations in entirety. But right now I want to talk about kind of the issue and face it head on. And there will be another piece on Thursday out that expands on most of the trip, along with the addition of Queen of Politics at 7 p.m. So that'll be 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. and 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. And, I think, as always, the big picture contains a lot of all sides and views, as well as providing all details. So I don't want you to get a balanced view of, she's just an Islam hater and she went to London and now she's come back, even super hater. No. That's not it at all. But what I'm trying to do is help paint a picture here. And the picture is real. Okay? Just because you haven't seen it doesn't mean it isn't there. Just because you don't agree doesn't mean it isn't there. It's there. So in short, my specialty is basically human interaction, observation, communication as it relates to segments of the population. And there might be a perspective, okay, in that context that looks very different from what you see. And I'm currently working on a write-up about the current state of affairs as I saw it, contrasted with media in the United States, as well as those who I've known that have visited the area in the last 10 years, Americans, and also what I observed, experienced, along with the interactions of long-time locals spanning back generations in England, okay? So it should be delightful to read about and hear about, but you're just going to have to stay tuned and come back on Thursday for that. But right now, it's something so deep in my heart, and I've got to move through this because we are only about halfway through, and I only have like 20 minutes left of this particular show. So I need to move here, and I need to share with you something deep in my heart that I can't resist sharing with you, all about the sad state of affairs and the shift to the UK, specifically England. Now, I've never been there before, and I've never visited there. But I've talked to many people who have, and also people who do live there. I had relatives that passed through there. I've read stories. I've heard stories. Of course, this is generations ago. I mean, we all may have known somebody who's been there, and we've all seen what's been on the media. And it's not just England. It's so many places around Europe, but in particular England. What I saw, it's sad. And around about, while there are wonderful people there, okay, loads and loads of amazing people in London, England, and UK respectively, there is a massive influx of instability in the region. And I see it. It's like a vibration across that region. And I mean, it's seriously, certainly economically, it may be a burden, but the real true burden seemed to be, on topical observation, to be more socioeconomic, if anything, okay? It's socially, their interaction between certain groups there is even at more divide than the United States, even though they look to be cooperating and living in an environment seamlessly-ish. And I'm just going to leave that there, okay? Now, locals, those around for generations, seem to see it this way and express deep unhappiness with the quote-unquote changes, as many called it. I kept hearing that word, changes, the changes. I didn't want to be jaded by TV, so I never turned the TV on, not one time while I was there, not one time. I didn't want to see the news. I get enough on my laptop. I get enough on my social media. So one thing I have to give to the true English is they didn't want to speak poor about their nation. I have to give them props on that. Only that they didn't like the immigration influx, those quote-unquote changes that came with them, and that they really, really would like leadership to do something about it, even if those who are there were to stay. The current state is not liked at all there, much like the coexist movement in the USA, only they're not so out to speak harsh of the nation or the leaders. I mean, it was an interesting dynamic that I'll share more about in that other segment. But look, this is no different than what we see here in the United States, only the citizens approached it differently. And I would say that in the UK, it's about 5 years ahead of the US on its influx. Now, I think those reasons are based on this point. On a topical observation are location, as well as being far more liberal-leaning group of nations. Now, the political infrastructure there, the structure there, the climate is progressive left, and left. I mean, even the conservatives are left with a dose of fiscal traditionalism, in my opinion. So I'll go into that in my next segment as well. But now, the only group I found to be more right or moderate-esque were those in business, or those who had been in business and much older folks. Okay, when I say much older, 80 plus. Now, of course, I have yet to finish my analysis and write up with some detailed research, but really the Brexit folks are there. Like the Trump folks are here, basically. In droves, there are a lot of them, many, many, many of them. But most people were hesitant. And most people I spoke to saw the divide and reason, but due to their lack of ability to confront government as the bloated bully it is, taking everyone's lunch money, they just could not acknowledge the need for cutting off the immigrant flux and protecting citizens. It blew my mind. So now the referendum, as it was referred to, is poo-pooed and met with well over a dozen sighs and grunts as I talked to people. I'm no joke. So along with, and I saw graffiti along with chalk, pro and anti-Brexit graffiti, okay, in London. And some of it was even, I took pictures, I'll share in my piece that I'm doing the write-up, on right by the old War Office, okay, across from the King George's statue, where, I have to wonder if they knew where they were riding at all. I do. I just have to wonder. In any case, we have to move on from this subject, but I just want to press on you, okay? And I am an American citizen. I went there as a vacation, and being that I love country, I love my country, I love the United States, but above that, I love people. And what I see happening to people being bled dry, nation after nation, person after person, family after family, food off the table of people, good, hardworking people for those who don't. For those who are fleeing, yes, if some of them are in dire, desperation, but many of them are fleeing. Men who are under 50 fleeing their countries. They should be fighting. Okay, I have a hard time with this. I have really, really hard time with this because I love people, and not just the people of America, but I love people. Families, and those people who are fleeing and leaving their countries. I'm going to tell you what, if something push comes to shove here in America, we aren't leaving. That's not happening. You're not going to see a flood of us heading over the border. No ma'am, no sir. We're going to stay and fight. Now, but the thing is just bleeding people's wallets dry for your own personal sake. It just grown men, it just. Women and children, I understand, but grown men, it just blows my mind. We have to move on. But I just want to press on you. All right, we're not alone in our fight to allow taxpayers to keep their own money they earn, okay, rather than hand it out to others who are just jumping a border or cry foul from other nations. Not one person I spoke to was happy about the benefits in the UK given to those who come in there with a handout. Wanting. Not one person. I mean, even the immigrants I spoke to, several from harsh working backgrounds, long hours, some 3, 4, 5 jobs, said that they never expected anything, and to be pushed and punished from Brexit and deported as criminal. Now, in those cases, I mean, perhaps the U.S. can learn from that idea. Okay, the idea that if you can prove, like the days of old, it used to be, real and true immigration law. If you can prove to be self-sustaining, not a burden, you can be considered to stay. I mean, if you're not here illegally. I mean, laws are laws. We need lawful people who want to contribute, be participatory citizens of these nations who are going to build communities, not drop trash everywhere. So now we need to touch on the AHCA, which, as the Senate has now proposed, is an amended version or policy. Basically, what they're calling this new amended policy being put forth, they're calling it Better Care Reconciliation Act, okay? BCRA. Come on, people. BCRA. It's so tempting to make a joke, and I can't because I come from a family which has had breast cancer in the past. And BCRA, Gene? Yeah, we need to look. Okay, look, insurance does not equal care or quality care or affordable care. The people naming this stuff are basically need of marketing skills. But let's get to the guts. So several write-ups released. The CBO will be giving a report, and its vote is going to be rumored for the Senate for next week. The highlights of the bill, it's not pretty. I think it's better. It's going to offer more options in terms of the ability to buy stripped-down plans for citizens. I mean, it's a little bit more flexible, but there are still some big holes. I know I didn't get too much to the core on that. We basically need to just turn up the heat on Congress, enforcing immigration, pushing for more border security, north and south, wall. We need to work on that one as well. So Texas is still the highest influx on our lower border, and we definitely need a comprehensive deterrent there. So make sure you contact your reps in the Senate and in the House. The Congress number is 202-224-3121. That's 202-224-3121. House.gov, Senate.gov. You can also look up other resources on my website, aaroncruz.com, or send emails and inquiries to info@aaroncruz.com. As always, we want to grow together and find common solutions to find common ground. I'll answer any questions you have. Don't hesitate to reach out. We are in this together. United we stand. God bless you, and God bless America.
To hear more, And to learn more on how you can make an impact or about Political Core and the Aaron Cruz Show, visit us online at aaroncruz.com. That's ERINCRUZ.com. Thank you for joining us, and see you at the